Hey, it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review. Let's talk about the brand new 4K edition of the original, The Terminator. I honestly have not watched this movie in years. I guess I watched it so many times back in the 80s that I kind of have it memorized. And I have 3 different Blu-ray versions of it and just got the 4K, and I popped it in last night and did a little comparison. I'm going to do a second podcast where I compare all the different versions and all the different soundtracks that are available. Actually, some extras were different as well. But for the 4K, if you're thinking about picking it up, you're a little worried about what James Cameron did with some of the other 4Ks that have come out recently, you can rest easy. This looks fantastic. Sounds fantastic. All right, first up. He released Aliens and a few other movies a few months back, and people complained about True Lies and didn't complain about Aliens or the Abyss. I don't know. I haven't picked those up yet because they were a little controversial, and I'm kind of waiting. They didn't do steelbooks. They didn't do anything limited edition. They just released the movies. I can pick them up anytime. I've got all those movies in Blu-ray, so I'll get the 4K when they're great. Anyway, well, True Lies never came out in Blu-ray, so that's one thing. But anyway, I'm waiting on that. On the other hand, Terminator I really wanted. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I have Terminator 2 in 4K. I have the rest of the Terminator movies. I'm, a big fan. And I had heard early advance warning that he was not as AI concerned with cleaning this movie up, that they did use the tools they have, but applied them a little less liberally than they did on some of those other movies that came out this year. I will tell you that grain is intact. It looks like an older film, but it looks fantastic. Everything is very sharp and clear. And did they fix a few things? I noticed some things that were still, some of the herky-jerky stop-motion animation is still herky-jerky. Some of the other special effects and kind of thing are, when they switch from a practical effect to the real head and things like that. But all in all, it felt like the movie. And when I popped in the Blu-ray after and just fast-forwarded to a couple of scenes, a couple of the same things, just the 4K is brighter, clearer, cleaner, and I don't mean like things have been washed away. The detail, the close-ups on Arnold, on the black guy who's the garbage man at the beginning, the lightning, like things that were supposed to be bright were brighter on the 4K. Things that were supposed to be shiny were shinier on the 4K. One of the biggest things I could tell in just spot checking the two movies on the Blu-ray and going to the 4K, the beginning scene when Reese finally appears, there's a quick establishment shot of a wet city street, and then they pan over to the alleyway where he appears, and the city street looks completely different on the 4K. You can see the water beating up on the road and the details and the neon lights and the signs reflecting in the street a lot more than you could see on the Blu-ray. And that was just one example of the 4K, what 4K does with HDR. It had Dolby Vision. It had a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. A lot of people are talking about the soundtrack. I thought the Dolby Atmos was great. I thought it did replace a few things, like there seemed to be overlaid, like for bullet effects. You had the original sound and then something else on top of it that gave it more of a pew kind of sound. I noticed that. But for most of the movie, I just thought it was a very much front forward, but a detailed Atmos mix. There were some overhead stuff, some behind stuff, especially when you were in the future and the flying machines and things like that. There is also what a lot of people are talking about. There is a mono. The original theatrical mono mix is available on the 4K for the first time since the Laserdisc years ago. I listened to it a little bit. It's funny how Warner Brothers, and this is a Warner Brothers disc. Also, one of the things I noticed in pulling out all my Blu-rays, I've got a Sony one that Sony was in control of MGM's movies for a while. I've got 2 from Fox, which they were in control of the MGM library for a while, and now this one comes from Warner Brothers. The menu is the same as the Steelbook art. It looks fantastic. It's great new artwork. I'm usually a fan of the original, but this is really nice, really cool artwork. And when they list the soundtracks, it just says English remastered or English original theatrical. Doesn't tell you the difference that one is Atmos and one is mono, but that's what they are. And then there's some other languages and other subtitles as well. And listening to the mono, it is the original soundtrack. Like the same bullet sound effects sounded like they did originally. I didn't watch the whole movie in mono. I just kind of spot checked it a couple times because I want to save the audio comparison to all 4 different versions for the next podcast. This is basically for people who want to pick up the movie the week it comes out. For me, getting a movie the day it comes out, it either has to be a favorite movie or I'm getting a limited edition. And the Steelbook has been pretty hard to get. My Walmart here locally got the movie, but not the Steelbook. The Steelbook wasn't an exclusive to any company. You could order it, but they ran out of it very quickly. It is really great artwork. It's one disc in there. It doesn't come with a Blu-ray, and all the extras are on the 4K. There is one extra from the old Blu-rays missing, but there is a new extra as well, so it's kind of a trade-off. The extra that's missing is just an old interview from the late 80s with James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's an okay interview. People are complaining it's not on the new 4K, but if you have one of the old Blu-rays, just save it if you need that little 20-minute interview or whatever. I thought it was fine. I watched it again. It's been the same one that's been on the disc forever. I just forgot about it. I love that there are extras, but it's not make or break. For me, it's all about the movie and how it sounds and how it looks. This is the best Terminator has ever looked. It is the best it has ever sounded. It may not be perfect in either way, but I think it's the best that we're going to get. I don't think they could do anything better. There were a couple of shots where the optical effects, like you've got, it's not quite blurry, but it's just not as sharp in the background as the people are running in the front, but you have the giant machines in the back. A couple of those scenes suffered a little bit, and I don't think it was like 4K did anything bad to it. 4K just shows you the difference in the technology at the time. But for the most part, especially the fact that they use a lot of practical effects, especially for the Terminator himself, that holds up and all that stuff. You could see clearly the details and all those special effects. It was very interesting to watch. And I got to be honest, I forgot parts of the movie. There was a lot more to it than I remembered. And how does Terminator hold up now? There's a reason why we remember it and why it launched a franchise. It is arguably still the best one. Terminator 2 is better in most every single way, but the world building here, the fact that this was James Cameron's first real movie. I mean, he made a B-movie horror movie before this, but there is a sure hand behind the camera. They knew what they were doing. They shot certain ways in certain scenes to get the maximum effect for the little budget they had. This is low-budget filmmaking at its best, one of the best ever, actually. And, of course, it launched the career of James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a lot of other people that are in the movie. There's a young Rick Rossovich in there. There's a few other people. You go, wow, I forgot that they were in this. Bill Paxton, young in this. Both those guys were really skinny compared to what they became later. But anyway, long story short, Terminator looks fantastic. Pick it up. I think it's only about $24 for the 4K. I think it's $29 for the Steelbook, whichever. More than worth it if this is one of your favorite movies. And if you want to have a shelf full of Terminator movies, this is the good way to start because the artwork on both looks great. The movie looks the best it's ever looked. Sound the best it's ever sounded. Sorry, making stuff up here on the podcast. Anyway, high marks. It's one of the better 4Ks I've gotten this year. Not top tier. Obviously, newer movies look newer, but for an old 80s movie that was low budget, it looks spectacular, sounds spectacular, really a fun watch. And there's a reason why this movie holds up. Everybody in the movie's great. So check it out. Terminator is available on 4K now. Pick it up if you're so inclined. It's pretty amazing. I'm Scott. I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts are on the way, including the incredible Beetlejuice 4K. Looks and sounds amazing. Will be one of my top of the year. That'll be coming in the next podcast. Coming up right here on ROCKFILE's podcast. Thanks for listening.